very good afternoon to everyone. I'm assuming that people will be coming in the next couple of minutes, so we can take this one step at a time. Quick introduction, my name is Bernat, and I am part of the team at Innoma. I am not able to see the names and faces that you're here today, but I'm pretty sure that some of you are familiar faces who had the chance to meet around the world. Others perhaps not yet, so very nice to meet you all. Essentially, as a quick introduction about just who we are, for those of you who don't know us. So in OMAD, we're a group of math educators from Spain. We're part of a math education organization. And in the last 8 years, we've been working with educators, math leaders, administrators in a variety of countries. So beginning in Spain, in Italy, in Latin America. And for the last 3 years, we've also had the chance and the fortune to be here in the US. And today is honestly a really exciting time for me, and I'd like to share why. To be able to introduce this webinar series specifically on the California Math Framework. And the reason is that as we've walked across the world and we've been able to really understand the differences across countries and states, something that's very common is that every state and every country will have their framework or their set of standards. And when you look at those, like a lot of times it's just speaking the same language over and over, and it's really not a real attempt to bring about pedagogical change. And when the framework came out now a long time ago, and me together with our colleagues, so a lot of math educators, some of our PhDs in math education, and we had the time to actually sit down and look at the framework and read it well, we were just so happy. And we're so happy because it was actually a genuine attempt to take what math education research had said for a long time and try and articulate this in a way that could be spread. And so I'm very excited to be here today because that's also our mission as an organization. And I find it to be a really special occasion for all of us to continue spreading this word as leaders. Now, just to talk about the series a little more before we kick into today. So today's session, as you know, is going to be with Cathy Williams, which is amazing. She'll be joining in 5 minutes. But before that, let me give you this kind of horizon of what the series is going to be about. And then obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat. Now I cannot see them, but I'll try and check them in 5 minutes. All right. 1 second. Alrighty. So the why behind the series. I think there are 3 core ideas that as a team, we thought about organizing and running this series that were key to us. The first, we believe that it's a critical time to reflect on the framework. Why? Because obviously there is an adoption that will be coming up in the next few months. But beyond this, before we actually make any decisions, it's key that we define a vision for our classrooms. One that really represents us, one that we feel identified with. And the framework has a lot of answers, but it also has a lot of ideas, and be able to progressively go and approach them will be very relevant. Second, we want to support you in spreading this message. As we think about school districts here in California, I'm sure that there's going to be some of you that are part of COEs, some of you are part of school districts. It's a lot of people, right? And making sure that every one of our colleagues can actually get this message is our responsibility as leaders. And so what we'd like is to help you infuse those ideas. And one very quick note here, obviously everyone is welcome. So feel free to share the links that we'll share. Everyone, we're very happy to have anyone joining. And last but not least, the third major goal is to also provide one more practical lens to the framework. And so the framework has a lot of examples. It's very visual. It has a lot of interesting pieces in it. But at the same time, it helps that we try and give more examples, right? And try and be as concrete as we can, also with the support of experts. And that's also part of what we wanted to achieve with this series. Having said this, let's run through the sessions that we'll have very briefly. So what we've tried to do is gather what we think are the main topics for you to explore. There's a variety of. Today we'll begin with planning and teaching around big ideas. which I'm very excited about. Next week, we'll be using open and engaging tasks with Peter. We're going to move towards multilingual learners with Harold, and it's a session that I've seen him do, and it's amazing. And then we're going to move towards social justice and assessment, which I believe are two critical components too, both when we think about lesson design, but also when we think about driving change. And finally, the last session will be kind of a wrapping up and thinking together about the future, right? Which is, as we have explored these ideas, what are the next steps that I need to take as school district to be able to make this happen? Voila, as a general overview. Alrighty. Before Cathy joins us, which will be in 3 minutes, I'd like to take a moment to introduce her. She's the kind of person that doesn't need an introduction, to be honest. But I think there are a few things about Cathy that have really impressed me over the years. Obviously, I'm sure you know that she is a co-author of Mathematical Mindsets. I'm sure that most of you know what Mathematical Mindsets is, the books, and obviously her knowledge and expertise around big ideas. But besides, Cathy is someone who has worn a variety of hats throughout her professional career, beginning with being a teacher, obviously. So spending a lot of time as a high school math teacher, moving to being a coordinator at the COE level, which also was very interesting in terms of being able to provide a lot of professional development and being very close to a variety of educators K-12. And lastly, obviously, in her last years of work, being extremely focused on the design of rich tasks at Youcubed. And when I see Cathy doing professional development, it's always amazing because her passion is contagious. But on top of that, I think that she's extremely passionate about designing tasks. And so, yeah, today she'll be able to run us through one that I'm excited about. And yeah, oh, Cathy, perfect timing. Hello. I think you're muted.
Well,
there you go.
Wow, that's lucky time. Okay.
So I just introduced you, but please, can you share a few words to begin?
I don't know what to share. Math, it's always a party. So
Math is always a party.
this is the
I love
math
that message.
party. Another math day. I love it. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. It's very good to have you, Cathy.
Thank you.
All right. Shall we begin?
Yeah, let's jump in. Yay.
Let's jump in. Okay. So I know I set the format how it is, but it's super important to us so we can do this, that we can participate and be, just engaging with the activities together. Oh, someone raised their hand. I didn't know you could do this. Efren, please. Can you actually? Oh, several people raise their hand. Oh my gosh. All right.
Yay.
Hold on. I'm trying to see if I can see the comments. Bum, bum, bum.
I'm looking for those too. Oh, I found it. Yep. No, I don't have any. There's no chat in there. I don't know whether everybody's seeing chat.
I'm not seeing the chat myself.
Q&A is open, but nothing there. Oh, there we go.
Yep. Hold on.
Yep, the chat is working.
Let's see. For some reason, I'm not seeing it, but it's okay. Cathy, do you see it? Can you help me?
There's a little button at the bottom that says chat, and people are starting to chat is online, they're saying. Yes, it is. Oh, they can tell us who they are. Wow. Okay.
I love that.
Sebastian, you might be coming in from the farthest away, I'm going to say, but let's wait and see.
Where is he coming from?
West Africa. I'm trying to think of what time it is there. No, 11 a.m. Okay, this is serious. Well done. It's middle of the night for you. 12 a.m. Okay.
All right. I love this. Let's continue the thread. Where is everyone coming from?
Let us know where you're coming from. Tell us who you are.
Let's see.
Are you able to see it, Burnett?
I'm figuring it out if I'm completely honest.
It's down in the bar at the bottom.
For some reason doesn't.
Oh,
That's a
San
thing.
Diego, my home, where I come
Yeah.
from, Ramona. Yay for SoCal people. Bakersfield, Beaumont. Wow. Oh, okay. And then Barcelona. Yes.
Ooh, someone joining us from Barcelona. That's my
Yeah.
home. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I
That's
think
yeah.
well, from where I'm sitting, I guess it depends on where you're sitting on how far away Africa is for you. But from here, it's pretty far.
Certainly, yes.
We got somebody from Stockton. Wow.
That's super.
The California
I love this
Adventure.
variety.
Oh, and then Palm Beach, Mexico. Very cool.
That's so cool. That's so cool. That's awesome. Okay, well, now that we know this, we have a quick question for you. I'm
Okay.
gonna share my screen again.
Okay.
Actually, couple questions.
Oh, just two. Okay.
Let's see. No. For you, Kathy, I have plenty, but just for our group, let's see. We want to know what they think first. Let's see.
All right, let's do
Um,
it.
get Kathy, can you actually see my screen?
Yeah, I just have to toggle there, but I will. There we go. Got you.
Perfect. Yes, super. So, um, just to get our minds thinking a little and to pick your brain just to as to where your mind is at. So, a couple questions. First, we'd love to know what excites you about this new math framework. Now, to do this, two options. Either you scan the QR code that you see with your phone, probably it's the easiest one, or you go to slido.com and you use essentially that code. I would scan. It's probably easier. And just hear any thoughts, anything that comes to your mind. But it'd be great if you all share something because I feel like it's such a great way to go to kick off the conversation. I mean, as we wait for their answers, what excites you the most about this new math framework, I think? All right. Kathy, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Mm.
all learners can be math learners. My word was equitable. I can see there's
Equitable.
yep.
Love it.
Focus
Yep.
on thinking. Oh, I love that one too. I want it.
Let's see.
Okay. I just want to start typing other people's words.
Please, let's unpack it. Let's wait until they finish
Yeah.
typing. Let's see. I'm curious to see what comes up more. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. All right.
The meeting is being recorded, Andy. And is it going to be available on recording or not?
It certainly will.
Okay.
Yes. At the end, you'll be able to provide your contact information and we'll share. So no worries at all about that. Thank you for asking that, Andy. Hmm. So, aha. I love it. Kathy, what are your thoughts as you look at this screen?
That people are paying attention to the framework and what it's about because these words definitely capture it. I love that.
Yeah. Such a
Um,
such a lot of richness and the variety of ideas.
yep.
I love that thinking is in there
Yeah.
as well. I mean,
It's about darn time.
yes. Oh my gosh. And the opportunity and equitable, I guess, being going very hand in hand, no? What do you think?
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. And just there's a lot in this framework. I mean, and is it the longest framework that's ever been written for California? I mean, I know there's people in this call too that can answer that question. Uh, it's rich, that the authors didn't stop. They just kept going to make sure they captured the committee. The committee didn't stop. They let the authors know what they wanted and they kept it going. They got it to be what they believed in. I mean, I'm so thankful to all the people that were on that committee. Um,
100%.
the committee, if you're
100%.
not sure that know what I'm talking about, the committee of educators that come together, they're the ones that then engage with the authors and the authors produce what the committee is wanting. And it's a committee of our colleagues and peers around the state. So it's a beautiful process, and this framework is a fantastic piece of work.
No doubt. And I mean, as I look at all these items that each and every one of you has shared, right? Like, I feel like something that's very key is some core ideas, no? Like, math should be accessible. And I think that it's kind of part of the reframing that we have to do, no? Which is math is accessible. But obviously we need to ensure that the pedagogical choices that we make, right, either in the activities that we use or obviously in our role as facilitators in the classroom, that they reflect that, right?
Absolutely. And then, getting it in the framework, that means, okay, this is where we're at. This is our guide. And
Yep.
that allows us to put the resources. It directs publishers on what to write to. It really, it's a process that I think is just a beautiful thing.
No doubt.
If public comments happen, it's well done. And just we have quite a few people on here that are from outside California or outside of the US. And as I'm traveling around, and Bernat, you as well, right?
Yep.
As we travel around the world, I hear really positive comments about the California framework, which is exciting. I mean, and it's exciting.
That's a very good point.
Other states are talking about it, other countries are talking about it, other educational systems.
No doubt. And a lot more to unpack, but let's move on because we have another question.
Oh yeah, okay.
Flipping it around, very important. What are the challenges that you foresee? As you picture yourselves in the implementation of this framework, I'm sure some of you have already been doing a lot of work on that. So what are the things that you're beginning to see? What are the things that you have in your mind, right? Mindsets, training. Okay. Yes. Really important. Understanding. Making the shift, right? Which I think part of the question here obviously is how, right? Like, what do we need to make that shift? Which for sure should be part of our conversation today, Cathy.
Yep.
Yep. I see high quality instructional materials as one of the answers. I think that's also a really important piece, right? Is as we think about change and what it takes to actually make this change, sure, materials are one part of it, right? But we need to think probably, what else is there, right? Like, what is that full picture that we actually need, either in my classroom as an educator, but also obviously as a school or as a district, right?
Yeah. And I think, seeing funding up there, and that's one of the things, we want, we want to help people shift their mindset. We want to help people be able to have the resources to not only have the high quality instructional materials, but also to have the resources to get the professional development and all those other pieces
100%.
are so important. And that takes money. And I hope that there's going to be a commitment for this. I know we have a beautiful system in the state of California with the county offices, and they're the ones that come in and support. But these things take money, and takes people.
It is by all means, but I do think something very powerful that I like to think about, right, is we can gather in a day like today all together here, and I think the power of the community actually comes in days like this, right? Which is we can all get together for free on a video call and just have a meaningful conversation about this, right? And I think if we all think not just we all have many circles, right? So if we don't just think about our inner circle, but we think about this wider math education community that we're part of, I feel like we can help each other a lot, right?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
We are better together, and there's so many people out there to help, and really quality educators in the classrooms 100%. All across the state.
Yes. I love it. Okay. Thank you all so much for providing your inputs. All right. Now, to kick off, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, which I'm sorry, because I'm not as acquainted with Zoom. Okay. I'm back. So, Kathy, I'd like to, to jump in and begin unpacking today's topic, right? So we want to talk about what does teaching around big ideas mean.
Mhm.
Um, it's I feel actually very humbled to be with you today after all your many years of work on this and from so many different lenses. Um, I think it's important that we take this one step at a time. And I guess that the first thing that comes to my mind is when we think about big ideas, what would you say? What's your best take at what is a big idea?
Mm. Yeah, I get asked about big ideas quite a bit. To me, a big idea is, well, and I contrast it, I've been in education, public education now 40 years,
Hmm.
a little bit more than that. The way I was taught, it is the way it was, but, it was a topic each day, learn how to do
Yep.
this, and we move on and it builds off of each other, but then we might go to another chapter and the connections weren't there. I'm doing this now and it's not connected to that, and I have no idea,
Right.
and it's not connected to my world. Later on in my career, teaching, I got to teach with the National Science Foundation funded programs
Hmm.
that were in the late 90s. And they were amazing. They were showing connections outside of mathematics to science to, all kinds of things. And I think that
Yep.
gave me a glimmer of an idea. And then today, really mathematics is about connections across fields. And so
Absolutely.
across fields, and then not only, and then across inside of itself. So when I think of a big idea, I think of a domain, let's say, I think of standards inside of multiplication.
Sure.
And then I think about, well, what does that apply to? And so I just start, I read through the standards a lot, the grade level standards, and I just, you start to see connections. Well, there's area, and we can connect it to maybe we're going to collect data, and then we can talk about geometry if we're talking about area, and just starting to see
Hmm.
patterns. And there's skip counting, but maybe I want to go into multiplicative thinking, so
Absolutely.
that's where, to me, a big idea when I look at it is a lesson. It incorporates standards from across domains.
I find that to be a really concrete insight that I think as we think about, how do we observe big ideas in action, right? Like that can be a really practical thing to keep in mind. I like it very much. Mm, you mentioned two types of connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really relevant as we think about the framework too, right? Um, One is we could say the within math, right? Intra-mathematical connections.
Yep.
And then it's between math and the world, right? Other subjects, like whatever. Um, I find what would you say is the goal of the first type, right? So why do these connections within math make sense? Why do we need them actually? Because you could make a case that I don't know that it's simpler to just target one given standard, simpler to just take one unit on addition and focus on that.
Mhm.
Um, why is it worth to make that change?
I think about deep learning,
Okay.
um, and the more representations we see, the more the across, the different domains, the more I can connect it to the world around me, to another mathematical topic. If we keep
Mm,
it really linear, like I went to school when I was young, then you don't see those connections, And then for me, math was about the answer. Okay, can
mm.
I do what I was told to do and get an answer? And
Yes.
then later, obviously, when I needed to think mathematically as I went on, I went on to get an applied mathematics degree. Um, I had trouble with connections. I wasn't seeing it. Math got really hard at times trying to work through it. I think, today kids are really happy when they start to see the connections. Teachers are happy when we start to see the connections.
Yes. Yes. It's and perhaps something relevant here is that those connections have always been there, no?
Hmm.
Like for an extremely long time, but
Absolutely.
but we have this fight against how we were taught, right? which is obviously tough because it's very counterintuitive, no? Saying, okay, I was taught this way. Sometimes even we got to be successful, whatever that means, right, within the system by being taught that way. And so it's like, okay, how can I actually unlearn and relearn? And now, why is it worth it? No, and I think that as we think about equitable instruction, which is obviously like core piece in the framework, I think the reason is that there are so many kids that actually are not successful, right? I don't know what you believe, what your thoughts are.
No, as you're talking, I'm gonna admit it. I went through and, did a degree in applied mathematics at a high-ranking university in the math program, and I struggled, and I was scared to struggle. So there's the mindset piece, but I never really felt like I knew. I wasn't comfortable when I was teaching in high school. There were moments where I thought, "Oh, I just don't know enough." And today I recognize I was missing the connections. My discomfort was me recognizing I don't see the mathematical connections. And as a high school math teacher, I certainly didn't understand elementary and primary education and the role of just how we develop number sense and all of those things. Today, I'm really obsessed with that, and that's a lot of the work I do today at Youcubed. But I think the of knowing is I think I don't know. I'm just going to generalize and wonder. Seeing connections across things, I think as a human, it just makes more sense, and it kind of has this better, more comfortable feeling. I don't know. It's what I'm trying to explain. But
No,
it
but I
makes
feel
sense to me.
I feel it's something that we all can relate to, no? Like, we actually like make sense of the world by making those connections.
Mhm.
Like, how do you know that a tree is a tree? Is because in your mind you develop that reference, at some point in time, and you're able to make that connection, right? Um, but going back to your initial point, right? In thinking about, okay, like, the idea of, to understand the big idea, we need to see those connections within math, so potentially across domains, right?
Yeah.
Um, that speaks to design, right? So that speaks to how an activity or lesson is designed.
Mhm.
Mm, as you think about the teaching component, what is relevant here for you? What do you think math leaders should be thinking about from a training perspective, but generally speaking, like, what does the teaching part entail?
Yeah, there's, well, a lot of things I think it entails. One of it is, I've got to feel comfortable with not knowing. And
Hmm.
and be able to
Okay.
take that leap of faith, because nobody knows everything about mathematics there is to know. That isn't the responsibility of any one human. It's kind of that curiosity and that willingness to engage with what I call the community of math learners. When I walk into a classroom and I'm teaching today, the first thing I start doing is setting up my community. We're in this together. I'm
Yep.
not the answer keeper. This is something we're going to work on together. So I think about that. I I really think there's just so many pieces that go into it. The other one is, I need to be able to feel what it is. To say, hey, go teach a big idea. You've kind of there again. I've got to understand it and have some ideas about it. I'm watching some teachers right now that
Hmm. Hmm.
are able to start to see the connections across standards, and they're making their own big ideas, which is
Yes.
amazing. But it took them a while to get there, right? So there's a learning curve to this. I think
Yep.
having access to materials that help us see that and help us also, students, depending on what grade level you teach, the minute you walk in with a group of students and want to work towards big ideas, there's some students, that they themselves will say, wait, what is this? They like the linear approach. Uh,
Of course. Of
so
course.
yeah,
It's
there's work to be done.
I find no, but I find it very, very insightful because you share two ideas that at the surface level could seem contradictory, but they are absolutely not. And one is, you need to accept not knowing, and tell me if I understand as
Yeah.
well. You need to accept coming in not knowing,
Yep.
but we should not accept that we don't try and understand those connections over time, right? and I love it because this is like this growth and learning journey is one that we're all in, right? And as we talk about growth mindset, which obviously is something that Joe talks a lot about, obviously, but the framework also speaks to
Yeah.
about it, and I think this really embodies that, right? Which is if we want, though, if we want our kids to understand those connections, we need to understand them ourselves, and if we don't, that's okay. But it's always an opportunity to ask, right?
Yeah, you're right. I
That's
love that you got that. That's me. Yep, one end and the other, but they
no, but it's completely like it's an amazing connection. I love it.
But and part of it too is, I think today, the way I was taught and the way I was taught to teach, I really believe today was it was like I'm trying to program write code into these minds that are in my classroom, and I perceived my role to be that I've got to give them my mathematics so that then they can reproduce my mathematics onto a paper. And today, I think about all the student agency that was lost,
Right.
and all the student thinking that wasn't
Mhm.
there, and how many students today think that their role is to get an answer. They don't see it as a thinking subject, as a creative subject. We've had students come into research studies and say, well, I can't do math, I'm creative.
Mhm.
Heartbreaking.
It is.
And I think, wait, it took me years to figure this one out. It's like, wait, my applied math degree is a Bachelor of Arts. And so then I have these moments and I just start to think, wow, we just have a messaging problem. We really need
I
to
would agree with that
embrace
one.
the creativity and the brilliance of our students to join us at the table and share the connections they see to the world around them. That's the beauty of it.
I love that, and this makes me think of as we go back to this teaching component, right? And we focus more on the pedagogical side of things. Um, I don't want to dive into the debate between is it better to have direct instruction, is it better to have complete free exploration? I think research is pretty clear where the answer lies, but it's not the topic of conversation necessarily. But where my mind is, what do you think? What are some of the guidelines though for people who really want to take this step towards teaching around big ideas? From a pedagogical standpoint, is there any red flag, anything that you would say, this is not compatible with teaching around big ideas? What would you share here?
Gosh, I've been doing this work for a while, and in my former role as a director of mathematics in a large school district, K-12, one of the big things is one, getting people to take a leap of faith, because a lot of times, it's like, wait, they won't do well on the test if I don't do it this way. My comment tends to be, well, they're not doing well on the test anyway. I mean, this data isn't what I hope it could, I wish it was, and I believe it
Sure.
can be, so then that. Um, so I think there's that leap of faith. And then the other one is, really to let go of, for some people, I've had a teacher tell me, just come to me in tears saying, but I can't let go of the control. It's the only time I have control of my class is when I'm teaching math. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things, part of it is, we've kind of got to let go, and big ideas are messy. And
Right.
you did bring up direct instruction, so I'm not going to let that one go, because direct instruction is in my toolbox. I see teaching
Mm-hmm.
as, we have, and over the years, and we develop tools in our toolbox. Direct instruction is in my toolbox. It is something I choose sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I see the
Mm-hmm.
big idea teaching is going in and saying, okay, let me give you a chance to see what you know and what you can figure out working together.
Right. Yep.
Then I get to sit back and watch and realize, okay, they need to learn that. They need to learn that, the different things. And so I call it messy because it isn't the page is going along or whatever, but I get to sit there and say, oh, well, now I know, and then I get to choose the teaching tools I'm going to use to teach certain things. absolutely direct instruction might come out of my toolbox at different times.
Mm.
And that's
Mm.
what I love too, thinking about as the agency of the teacher. So when we're teaching to big ideas, it really is an open time. It's kind of like,
Yep.
instead of me piecing my lectures, oh my gosh, if there's any former student of mine in this chat, please, I owe you an
That'd
enormous
be fun.
apology for those first years. But sitting there and I was just assuming they just needed to know whatever I was going to give them, my mathematics. But today it's like, well, show me what you know, show me what you bring to the table, and then we're going to
Yep.
collectively work on what we need to know.
It makes so much sense. Yeah, I love that. All
So
right. Well, I think
I don't hate
it's
direct
yeah.
instruction. I'm not saying that. For
You
me,
you've been. I mean, just
it's
for the
not my
audience,
first best instruction, but it is in my toolbox.
I love that answer. I had never heard it like this, and I find that very compelling. Yeah. Just
Yes,
audience,
people
just so
say
that
I
you
hate
know,
it. I don't hate it. It's a tool.
Kathy, you've been really you've laid it out so well. Yeah, she sometimes thinks that she is too bold with her statements. I
Oh,
think
you
you were
haven't
very
gotten any
balanced.
yet. They're coming, right? Oh boy, I can drop them, but yeah.
I love it.
Anyway, we do have a
Alrighty.
question in there.
Oh, let's.
Yeah, Kristen,
I'm
exactly. We're
still not
always
seeing the chat.
learning and improving. I mean, that's really the essence of teaching, right? We're just on a continuous learning journey beside our students, um, and beside the other people we work with. How do we help to support teachers who are nervous that they don't have the mathematical background to help steer the teaching? Ah, yes, that's the mindset piece. In the work I've done, I've found we need to sit and do math together. I like to choose the right tasks. I have a whole suite of tasks. In fact, if you reach out to me, I'm happy to share, kind of different situations, what tasks I might start with a group. But yeah, because a lot of times we ourselves, we don't have that confidence yet. But I see it change. I think today in mathematics, wherever I might be working, we do math together. And I don't care what situation it is, whether it's at a faculty meeting or a principal's meeting, or I could walk into a school board meeting if I'm speaking, they will be engaging in math before I do my reporting. I just think we really have to demystify this thing. It does have a fear aspect to it. And um, the nervous fear center it kind of blocks. The neuroscientists talk about how a fear of a spider or a snake kind of shuts our brain down. People have the same fear of mathematics. So if not only with teachers as well as with students, we also have to go in, what I call, with a compassionate heart and have a conversation about it. Um,
Yeah.
Good questions.
Is
Oh,
there? I'm still not seeing the chat.
oh,
It's
yeah, if
okay.
you can see down, there's another question. What looks like instruction through big ideas, but actually isn't?
Well,
Hmm. I
huh.
can get myself
That's a
in trouble with this one.
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, I'm drinking water.
Go for it. And then we can answer this, and then we can try and see what actually it means
Yeah.
to design around big ideas. So.
Well, something might be labeled as a big idea. And for me, a quick glance at it is, if the standards are labeled, I look to see if those standards labeled for that lesson are across domains. Um, and then the next thing I look at, if that's not there, then I just kind of read through it and I think, does this have an opening where student agency, student thought, student creativity is possible here? And because through that agency, thought, creativity, students can start to branch out and see different things. So um,
Mm.
that's the way I see it. I mean, I could take a beautiful big idea task and go in and completely compartmentalize it and piece it out and direct teach it. And yeah, I probably shouldn't even use
Mm.
direct there, but I could completely compartmentalize it and tear it up into tiny bits and teach each tiny bit. And therein, it had a big idea task, but the kids won't see the connections.
Mm. That might be something that's helpful, no? Like um whoever is like obviously it's human dependent, but like if that person is not able to explain to you the connection that underlies, that lesson or that activity, then I think that that can be a good proxy to say, okay, probably it's not there, right? Hmm.
Yeah. And this is, everybody, we all have our different styles of teaching. So I'm speaking a lot of my style of teaching. Others, I see other people do brilliant things with different styles. And so, there are those that can take those little pieces and weave them into a beautiful story and have them all be connected. So I
Hmm.
don't want to say I'm against that. I'm talking about my style, the way that I go into a classroom and teach. And really I go in looking for the openness so that I can see where the students are
Hmm.
and with a low floor, high ceiling task. And then I wait. Um,
Cathy, I'm thinking this might be a great time for us to jump into seeing some action,
okay.
into a couple of activities.
All right. Let's do it.
Sounds good?
Yep.
Okay. I'll share my screen. So for everyone's reference, we're going to be doing a couple of things. So first, we're going to be exploring one activity that Cathy will be leading, and then we're going to move into how that can look into design of session of a lesson.
So you'll get to see a piece of kind of the way I walk into a classroom in this one, because this is actually a lesson I designed and got to walk into a classroom,
Which is great.
yeah, and teach. So
Do you want to give some context as to what
yeah,
this is?
I will at the end. First, right now, what I want you to do and answer in chat, looking at this image, what does it mean to you?
By the way,
Something about it.
sorry, would you mind using the Q&A? Just because
Oh,
I can
sure.
actually find the
Yeah.
Q&A. So
Yeah,
I can see the comments there too.
yeah, and maybe you're because I'm in through my own Zoom portal, but you might not
It's
see the
okay.
chat down there. It's if
Doesn't
you can
matter.
see Q&A, chat should be to the left of it. But yeah, we can use Q&A. Let me get that up. There it is. So taking a look at this image, what do you notice? What do you see? What does it remind you of? What does it mean to you? Okay, Debbie says it reminds her of a dream catcher, a medal of some sort.
Hmm.
I'm seeing some
Hmm.
more dream catchers coming up.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, this is and so then for those of you, so in a classroom I would say oh, arrows that make the four directions. Nice. So all of these things. So walking in with an image and just saying, hey, tell me this is my style. Tell me what it looks like. What are you noticing? I'm trying to bring people in. What do you see? What do you notice? What do you wonder? All those amazing questions out there that we have today going around for these types of things. Um, okay. Represents a tribe, maybe. So we could talk about that further. If I'm with students, I definitely talk about that. I want to know, well, when you say a medal, what are you thinking of? Does it remind you of something? Maybe they'll tell a story, a personal story of someone at home or a medal they've won. Dream catchers, I've actually done this. Native American art, Cathy, I see that. I actually, when I took this image in, I was going to be teaching a math lesson at a First Nation school in Canada. And it's actually the first IB program for an elementary school, First Nation elementary school. So that was I worked with the campus and talking about what images would be appropriate. I had their help in choosing. So we talked about this. The students started telling the stories, the history,
Mm-hmm.
what this image meant to them. So that's the way we opened up, getting students looking at it. So you can go to the next slide. So the next thing I did was then I said, well, let's mathematize this because mathematics is everywhere around us. What do you see now? So, what do you notice? What do you wonder when we just focus on the center?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you see? Go ahead and tell us what you see. It's symmetric, okay? And we could unpack that. So here we go. This is how I start to fish for language, fish for what students are going to tell me. Prism, parallelograms made up of shapes, fractional parts, congruent shapes, polygons. So, you get, and as the kids, in a classroom, the kids are chattering about this. We're talking about it. I tend to write down what they're saying up on a board and put their name by it. Reflections. Um, so I'm going to color combos, distribution of colors, quarters of circles. I think someone earlier had said, I'm going to scroll around here and try to see. Quarters of circles. So and if you yourself, if you can scroll through the chat and see what people are saying, you can kind of get an idea of what people are looking at in the room, what's making sense to them. So one of the things I can tell, because I've done this a few times, more than a few times maybe, but there's wonderful math vocabulary in what you've listed. All kinds of, from geometry to fractions, and then color, 3D shapes. So I'm interested, Barb, you said 3D shapes. Barb, can you tell us a bit more about how you're seeing 3D? Because it's two-dimensional image, but Barb is seeing 3D. Let's see if Barb's going to answer us here. Barb's seeing something about the corners. It looks like an open book. Okay, everybody, look at this image and see if you can see the open book that Barb's describing, or that Catherine is saying after what Barb. So now, right, Catherine pulled up of what Barb wrote and now is saying, oh, coming away from the picture, triangular prisms. Interesting. So take a look and see if you can see something. What does it remind you of if you see something popping out of the shape? I've had people say that they see rooms. Okay, I see 3 different 3D crosses. Oh yeah. 4 cubes that I'm looking at. So now actually seeing cubes through a circular window. I've had students tell me they see open laptops. They see rooms, the floor, and I think we're seeing that described in our chat. The crosses, the arrows. I think somebody earlier said they saw arrows. And so, as we sit and we talk about an object, we can start to get a lot of and this is, roofs for houses. Cool. We can start to get, there's no right or wrong answer here. We can all just jump in and have a conversation. And it gives us a chance to see, well, what are we seeing? How are we describing it? What language are we using? And where do I want to go and focus next? So in the lesson that I was doing with the students, the next thing I wanted to do was see what shapes they were going to see. So then I said, how many triangles do you see? So I'll ask all of you, how many triangles do you see in this piece of art? And that's a funky question, I know. Right? Debbie says none. And then Catherine says 8 if you allow for curved sides. Yep. So now I'm looking, what's that shape flexibility? Are you, because you're right. Is it a triangle? Well, I need to shave it off. And we can talk about, well, is it enough triangle-ish? So I'm pulling in a question because what I'm working on, my lesson intent was to take this into unitizing so that they could tell me what fraction of the shape is orange and be comfortable estimating. So, that was the nature of this lesson. What I didn't anticipate when I asked them to unitize it and how many triangles, the students had a copy of this where they could draw on it. And they started making triangles and then they'd make a new line. What was fascinating to me, and, I would have never gotten this answer if I would have, had more of a closed question and not, done these other things leading up. They said, well, the number of triangles is infinite. And I was fascinated. I mean, these are elementary kids and they're telling me, I had 3 grade spans together and they said, well, we think it's infinite. That's what they were finally saying. And I thought, because and I said, prove it, right? So there's the other part of mathematics and what I see, in big idea teaching as well. A lot of it is, justify to me what you're seeing, convince me that this is the right answer. Instead of me saying you're right, you're wrong, convince me. And
so perhaps that S&P, right? Because a lot of times we see that why, how, and what, right? Which is hard to picture concretely in action, no? And obviously the big ideas are the what, but we cannot imagine the what without the how, right? Like they go hand in hand.
So in this case, yeah, the
Love
students,
it.
they kept dividing it up into smaller and smaller triangles. So we had a really good conversation about infinity. But they did get to the point, some of the students took this paper and they cut it up and they reorganized it to try to figure it out how much of the image is orange. There were just,
Mm.
really interesting conversations, but all the math that came out that day and the lesson and the language that I learned that they were used to speaking and the vocabulary they used, it was really, really good.
I'd love to, point out how important it is that we come into this task with the questions that we want to ask,
Yeah.
right? And not at all because it needs to be set on stone. Obviously, like we need to build on kids thinking, right? That's invaluable. But you knowing where you want to take this, right? You knowing how you want to facilitate this
Hmm.
is so key. And I find it incredible when you think about the power of four questions as right,
Yeah.
right, and like how much more effective this is than just taking those points and sharing them directly, right? Kind of to your point about direct instruction. If I came in here and I just told you, I wouldn't care, right? Mm, that's super.
Yeah, and one of the things too I should mention, that to me this is the big idea teaching is, when the kids you kind of have to I did not expect the answer of infinity. It's that moment of, you kind of got to be open to,
Mm.
okay, if I'm going to let this be an anything goes moment, and not all moments in my classrooms are like that, but
Yep.
I because that's how I get the kids to chatter and
Mm.
to justify. But yeah, I wasn't ready for that. So you have those moments where you're like, oh well, that's not where I thought this was gonna go. And then you figure it out.
I love it. Yep. Hmm. All right. Um, shall we see another one?
Sure.
All right.
Nothing better than playing with math. It's always a math
And
party. I've got the best
and
job in the world. It's math every day, all day.
I'm pretty sure several people in the audience here agree with you.
Oh yeah, I know, right? They're out there. Yep, that's why they're here.
Definitely, yes. Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen again. All right. So now Kathy and I wanted kind of to move one level higher, right? So we now saw one given activity, which is a really rich task. We now want to kind of take this at the lesson level and see what a lesson design around big ideas could look like. So this, just to put you in context as to what you're seeing, this is essentially kind of the first lesson that you would have in the learning progression to approach fractions. So it's a very introductory session. So kids, have seen fractions in the world, but they don't know what they are. Voila. And and this is one that I think is very compelling because the first benchmark fraction that we'll be approaching is 1/2. And that already raises a question, right? Is why should we begin with 1/2 and not 1/4 or something else? And that's actually because we always want to build from what we know, right? So we know what one is, right? We have an idea of a unit, obviously, and so 1/2 is half of that, and so that's at least something that could be more familiar to kids. And then 1/4 is going to be half of 1/2, right? So that's going to be a connection that we can establish as a next step in a more easier way. And I think this session, something that I find compelling is that essentially we're gonna obviously be focusing on fractions, but we want to establish those connections across domains, right? And so here specifically, we're gonna be making that connection to geometry, and we're gonna be doing it both visually, but also with manipulatives. And we'll use one of the manipulatives, one of my favorite ones, which is the cardboard tangram. I don't know if you see it on the screen, but it's, it's actually one that has a lot of possibilities. Kathy's laughing. We've talked about this. um, so anyway, that's kind of as an introduction for everyone's reference. Let's go through these step by step. So
Can I
we
jump
have,
in for a second?
of course, go ahead.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but there's just something here because we had a question that said, well, how do you know if it's a big idea lesson? Here's I didn't have this filter, but now I have it. I see your key vocabulary is going across domains. And then,
Good point.
standards are there. I can see we've got geometry and number of fractions, and we've got the math practices. But now I see another lens that I can start to look when I'm reviewing things is the vocabulary. So sorry, had to.
Excellent point. I love that one. Yep. All right, so let's go one step at a time. The warm up. I like this warm up. It's a which one doesn't belong. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone in this audience has seen which one doesn't belong before. But here, perhaps there are a couple of connections which are interesting, right? Which is first we see time, right? So half an hour, which is something that obviously kids have seen many times before, so they can pull from their familiar context. And we see money, right? Which, to be fair, I always think that coins are not used much. But I was where was I? Close to San Mateo yesterday, and I had to park and I had to use coins. And I was like, well, yeah, I didn't have any coins. So, well, coins are still in use. And then obviously, like you're going to have this familiar context, and this is obviously a very low floor, easy entry point to the session in which we want kids to be able to use this familiar context to begin participating and begin thinking in a fractional way, even if obviously they're not aware that that's a goal and that's where we're heading, right? Now, once we warm up, the idea is that we can get into this exciting question, which honestly, I'd like for all of us to connect here because it's actually a good question. Let's see. So, in this shape that you see, where do you see one half? Let's see. Everyone's thinking.
Let's see what we get.
All right. Someone is saying the left diagonal. Mm-hmm. So the green and the orange triangles. Mm-hmm. Paul and Cathy, look at this. Someone says brown is half of the yellow square.
I love that one.
Mm-hmm. All right. What else?
And I love that, you could just say, I see a half. The purple triangle. I love that, because now I have to sit here and look, okay, the purple triangle is half. What's it half of? And I have to sit and look at this shape. I love that. Thank you.
This is
for that.
Let's see what else comes out. Then we can reflect on it.
Oh, there's a hard one. Nolan says the square is half of the orange triangle. Now that can trip some kids out. I love that.
Let's see. What else?
Blue side compared to full. Oh, interesting. That's really cool. The blue square side where it's is half of a full side. So now we've got somebody talking outside of 2 dimensions. They've gone to a 1-dimensional measurement and they're talking about a half. Fantastic.
That's crazy. I definitely had not seen that one even myself before.
Me either. I didn't even think about that.
I love it. I love that one.
See, this is it, and this is what our students do, and it's just so much fun in a classroom. And yes, it's crazy
but that's
messy, but it's so much fun. Green is half in green.
What else is coming?
Okay, that's really interesting.
Say please.
Of course, it's coming from SJCOE. Green is half of orange and green. Okay, that's fun.
Sure, that one. That one I can see for sure.
Yeah, that's in the chat.
My gosh.
Debbie says, I like how our language is getting more precise by describing a relationship. What is the part? What is the whole? Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, right, Cathy? I mean, like what we're seeing is that obviously the answer will vary depending on what you take as the whole, as the unit, right?
Yep.
So the amount will always be relative to the unit that we see and that we pick, right? Now, obviously going back to low floor, high ceiling, like here you could have a majority of your kids that see the easy option, you could say easy, right, of taking the orange and the green together, right, which obviously make a half. But potentially there's going to be this variety of answers, and I think that this is part of the richness. But as we've seen in other instances, where do we go from here, right? Which is, hey,
Yeah.
how do you know that it's one half? I mean,
Yep.
how can we know?
Mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts, Kathy, on how we can explore this?
Well, you're just saying that. It's just like you're saying, well, how can we know that it's half? Now we're going into that justification and proof, which is, okay, the answer, fine. It's cool. But what really matters is being convincing. And can I convince you that, whatever it might be, whether it's the length of the side and the blue part is half of that, or
Yep.
in the other, and we can sit here and now we have, questions that students have generated, the answers they've generated, and then we try to convince and we try to and however we might. Some students might want to take this, they have the pieces, they can play with them,
Right.
they can twist
So,
them around and
mhm,
turn them. Let's go to the yellow square to the orange triangle. That's a huge one because a lot of students don't think that if I'm talking a half, it can't be separated. So if I translate,
mm,
if I take that yellow square and put it at the top of that orange triangle, just slide
yep.
it over, then I have these two other triangles that are separated and they're orange. And that is the neuroscientists talk about this, and there's research on this that students really get. That's a leap of I call it the leap of learning. That I
Mm,
start to make sense that, oh, half doesn't have to be half. It can be two other pieces that are half, and
completely.
then those two other pieces don't even have to be equal, right?
They don't have to be equal.
Yeah.
But this discovery is not at all obvious, right?
Yep.
Um,
That's why
but
I
this is
love this, that it's
mm.
colored like this. From now on, I want my tangrams to always be a different color. I just do.
uh,
Somebody needs to make this out there. If there's a supplier listening, hand to mine or somebody,
please.
please, please, can I have this?
Uh, but okay, but let's see how we can take that step, right? Because certainly this piece of exploration through the tangram directly obviously can help, in justifying here, but it opens a lot of doors, right? And so let's see what in another activity we could kind of explore this. So here we're kind of changing dynamic, right? So essentially we've gone from having this conversation as a whole class, working, let's say, in pairs, and we give essentially one tangram per each pair, right? Now, here the idea is that we're gonna give them, we could give them a printable, like of the same shape, right? So something like this, but essentially on paper with the different colors.
Yep.
And then literally tell kids, hey, go look for one half using the pieces that you want, right? So freedom, which is also very important as we think about agency, right? Which in the framework it's a core idea. Um, and then here, obviously, a lot of things can come up. Just to show you some of the things that happen often,
Right.
we can find something like this,
Hmm.
which it's not one half, but kids may actually do it, and so this obviously can be a really good conversation opener as to why they've done it, right?
Yeah.
This is a common answer, right? Which is they think it is a common answer, and kids think often that it's the only answer, right? That's
Yes.
right because it's symmetrical. And at the end, like the richness here is in being able to see how this variety of representations have shaped their thinking and where we can go from there, right? So one of the doors that we can always open many doors, right? We can always go through many branches, but
Mhm.
one which is interesting is this. Take this as a reference. And we could ask kids now, right? After having explored for a little together. Does the blue parallelogram represent half the shape? What do you think, Kathy?
No.
No, right? It doesn't. Why?
Well, I would sit, and this is the beauty of having those pieces, to try to translate and say, well, brown is half of blue. And so that, all these different ways, or maybe I'm going to take that brown and show where it fits one place and show where it fits on another place. And that means that there's three browns, right? all these
Yep.
different things I might go about doing it. And what I love is, when we're talking about this and the students have the shapes, like you showed, the cutouts, they can
Yep.
actually
Yep.
pick them up and twist them and turn them and rotate them
Hmm.
in space. Um, I'm always fascinated with students at Stanford. They'll come into our Youcubed lab and they'll talk about interacting with geometrical shapes, and sometimes they'll say, I didn't get enough of that when I was younger. They really, it's not that they can't learn it, they didn't have the opportunities, and now they struggle with it a little bit, and then they work hard to
Completely.
get it. And
Yep.
so I love this for so many reasons.
Mm. I wanted to take this. I don't know if there are any questions, but I want to take this just one step further and see what people think.
Okay.
So, what
Mm.
happens now?
Amazing.
Does our answer change?
And
So
so
here we're gonna have. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
blue, and so I'm just clarifying, blue is, the question was, is blue half of the shape?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Yes.
Fun. Yep.
I mean, here the conversation will get interesting, right? Because there might be some kids that actually see it, right?
Uh-huh.
But there might be others that don't, right?
Right.
And here is where something that I find very powerful is where the manipulatives and this rotational exercise that you were mentioning before really come into play, right? Really have a purpose. Because
Yep.
sure, maybe here it's not as clear, but what happens
Oh,
when
cool.
you reframe it like this?
Okay, how many people out there are seeing 3D now? We've got two-dimensional space and yep. Sorry, I'm still mixed up in that. This,
No. Don't worry.
yeah. I just want to get out a piece of paper and fold it.
100%. That could
To
absolutely
move the
be.
pieces.
Yep. Yep. No doubt. And this is such a powerful idea, no? Like something
Yep.
that we can, and that's when we think about also these different ways to represent, and we think about UDL principles. This is, I think, an important example,
Yep.
no?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
something that I may not be able to see visually, I might be able to understand manipulatively,
Yep.
right? And that's a value and the importance of making sure that these two modes of representation go hand in hand, right? And they connect.
And then I start to, think mathematically, in the number sentences that can come. And if one whole is purple, brown, and blue,
Yep.
what part of the whole are the triangles? And it's kind of fun to start to think about that, and
The
kids will start
branches.
picking up their own questions. It's fun.
Mhm. I love it. Yeah, 100%.
Annette's asking which grade level this lesson is for. I think we're in third grade, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This there. Yes, indeed.
And
Well,
precursor, Tracy said, "Hey, this is a precursor to ratio and reasoning." Absolutely.
excellent point.
And
Yep.
really what's going on here, I'm just going to drop in one of the things we're really focused on at Youcubed. We have a neuroscientists that work inside of the Graduate School of Education at Stanford, and then there's a lot of writing on this, making mental representations. And so as we're sitting here and we're playing and we're having fun with these beautiful colored tangrams, but what we're really doing is we're making mental representations of a half, because a lot of times we start with circles, which are great, but we really need to move out into other geometrical shapes. And so here we're playing with tangrams. What a wonderful manipulative to be playing with. And because why circles are often used is you can envision the whole if you only see a piece of the circle, usually,
Mm.
depending on what piece. But if I show you, the slice, an eighth of the little pie piece of a circle, you kind of envision the whole circle.
Yep.
Not that way when we go into these polygons and things. So
Mm.
I love it. And let's
Kathy, I think we're 5 minutes. I didn't realize the passing of time. So
oh
we're 5 minutes before we close. Shall we do some
no.
like um just some takeaways,
Yeah.
from what we saw, and then just open it up for everyone's questions, obviously, as if there's anything we'd love to tackle it.
And really this captures, I see a big idea so much more, right? Because we've got the shapes and the kids are working on shapes and we're talking about
Yep.
fractions and we can talk about adding and we can talk about different things. And then of course we're not saying you don't move into the notation all of this. You absolutely do, but this lesson is building, I say we're, the materials. You're building
I love it.
representations, and you're giving kids that visual to hang on to, and it's brain connections. It's and it's fun. It's just fun. It's better than a
Which
work.
is key. That's why in chapter 2 we talk about equitable and
Yeah.
engaging. Because if you don't have that engaging component, I mean, you're not gonna have kids.
And
Right.
Liz loves the honoring of student voice. Exactly. We talk a lot today about agency for students, but what I love
Yep.
in PISA's report, the for year 2030, they call it, it's a wonderful word, and it's different, and I never remember it. Their learning compass for the year 2030. In that document, they'd spend a lot of time talking about teacher agency. And I truly
Hmm.
believe our students will not have true agency and until our teachers have agency. We really have to conquer that.
Um, I could not agree more. Mm. All right, let's bring it together. A few ideas that came
Yeah.
up today. Um, I mean, I'll go through them very quickly, just for the sake of time. First of all, let's all keep in mind as we live this with the why behind big ideas, right? And I think that to the question as to why it's worth it, it really is because these connections is the underlying pin of conceptual understanding. And I think we all agree that that's the end goal. And I would say actually that these connections are also help us see math in the world, which we didn't put here, but it's definitely very core. Second, for these to happen and to be effective, we need to see those connections ourselves. So, Cathy, I loved how you put it before at the beginning, right? It's okay that we don't know, but it's
Yeah.
not okay that we don't ask and we try and see those connections ourselves, right? Because if we don't understand them as leaders, as educators, our kids will not either, right? And I think that this connects with design. I mean, obviously we need to be critical about design, right? Like there are tasks that do not allow to really teach around big ideas. There are others that do. And so obviously we need to be able to, as we go, ask tough questions, be able to discern. And I think that it's key that we do it recurrently, right? Because we're all learning what this is, and it's definitely not an easy topic that we're dealing with. And last but not least, I would say pedagogy, as usual, and as anywhere in the world, matters a lot, right? And so
Mhm.
um, direct instruction, yes, it's part of our toolbox,
Yep.
but it's probably not the only thing that we should do, right? Because that transfer to kids will probably be, not as effective, right? If we don't create the right setting and if we don't foster essentially that inquiry and discovery process.
Absolutely. One of the things, and who knows best but the teachers that are in the classroom with the kids. The different, one style will work with one child in a moment and another one another. This is the incredible job that teachers do every day.
100%. Well, before we wrap up, I had this beautiful quote, but I'll just use it as an invitation for all of you to read chapter 6, 7 or 8, depending on whether you're TK5, 6, 8, or high school. But I definitely think that it's a chapter very worth diving into. Before we get to the questions, as a reminder for all of you, this is just the lineup of the series. Cathy, I'm extremely grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. No problem. Hey, Bernat, you've got
You're
a
the
question
best.
in the chat.
Of course.
What was the name of the tool with the QR code that you used at the beginning to collect our initial thoughts?
LOL. Slido.
Slider?
Slido. Slido.
Slido. Okay. Slido. There it is. Oh, thanks, Liz. Liz put it in.
Yes, thank you, Liz. Also, as we think about potential questions, I'd love, since it's the first of the series, we'd love to hear your feedback. Any thoughts, on things that you might be thinking about that you'd like to cover in the next few sessions. And also, if you'd like to receive as well the recording, you can share your information here on this QR code, and I will obviously share it. And if anyone is excited to receive tasks and lessons such as the one that we showed today, obviously, let us know. We'd be happy to.
Thank you. Yeah, connections are it. And oh man, I think for me, making connections with mathematics is what has me so excited about math today. It's just a candy store finding. And if you're really interested in that, oh my gosh, category theory in the branch of mathematics, a newer one. It's where a lot of women are mathematicians. Incredible.
Mm.
If you're
Mm.
interested in that, look up Eugenia Chang. Wonderful
Mm.
mathematician in category theory.
Mm. 100%. Are there any questions? Do you see any questions on the chat,
No,
Cathy?
I don't. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous now. I could have missed some questions. I'm scanning now. No, no. The tool question came in, but otherwise we're getting lots of thank yous and lots and lots of. You should be able to download the chat.
I really seem to be a boomer that I cannot find the chat. I will. It will be the anecdote of today's session.
Hover your arrow down at the bottom of your screen. See, we all have different Zooms, right? So my Zoom is
It's okay.
windowed,
I
but yeah. I've had this problem before. I'm so with you. It's just like the pen over there that you can write on now. That's
it
another one of
happens.
mine.
It's all right.
Yep.
It's all right. All righty.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Well,
Appreciate you.
appreciate you very much. We'll be very excited to see you all in the next few sessions. Cathy, you may join us. You may join us in the audience in some
Yes,
of them.
yes. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'd love. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the chat too.
Yeah.
All
Absolutely. All right.
righty. Big hug to everyone.
Yep.
Have a lovely evening. Thank you again,
Thank
Cathy.
you.
You're the best.
You're welcome.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.